the way it is taught, or it is supposed to be taught through the coursebook, which is part of the school curriculum, regardless of whichever board uh, the school is a part of, and the way it is supposed to be developed if a student had to take a Cambridge English International Language Exam test. So that's what we are going to be looking at. Moving on to the why of curriculum mapping. So, in recent years, it has been seen and understood that when it comes to offering any additional exam which is outside the curriculum, schools find it difficult. Sometimes teachers are unable to accommodate another exam, the preparation time which is required for an additional exam, because they are already hard pressed for time to finish their syllabus. They are meeting deadlines. So, which is why we thought if we could walk teachers through techniques of curriculum mapping, they wouldn't have to devote or squeeze out any extra time for any additional language classes. So that was the first intention in behind doing this webinar. And secondly, the teachers do not have to prepare or invest time in developing any extra resources for exam preparation, because most of it can be handled through the means of the course book. So these are the two basic reasons behind today's webinar and why curriculum mapping becomes so important. Now, since we have seen the what of curriculum mapping and the why of curriculum mapping, let's go to the how of curriculum mapping. So, how do we go about curriculum mapping? In this, we'll be looking at some techniques and approaches to go about mapping the curriculum. We will first look at certain techniques and approaches and do some specific tasks, and you have a look at some specific templates meant for young learners and middle school. And then we will take up the higher education arena, right? So we'll be looking at both school and college level curriculum mapping, right? In this, besides the techniques and the approaches, we will also have a look at the resources that are needed. And towards the end of the webinar, I'm going to familiarize you with a range of free resources and study material and references that are available and that you can make the most of, which are available online. And like I said, we'll be looking at the techniques and approaches through very specific tasks. So the first step in going about mapping the curriculum is that you need to familiarize yourself and acquaint yourself very well with the concerned Cambridge English exam. So if you remember the verticals that I showed you right at the start, we have three verticals: one for schools, one for general users, and one is the third one is the business English vertical. So depending on the vertical and the level of the exam that you are offering, you need to you can look at the levels here as well, and you have some of the verticals mentioned here. You need to familiarize yourself with three aspects of the exam at that particular level and belonging to that particular vertical. So first is, what is the language focus? Now I'm going to elaborate on each of these areas, so you don't have to kind of worry. I'm not going to breeze through it. So first is the language focus. The second is the test format. So what is the exam pattern? What is the test format? Now here we need to bear in mind that all Cambridge English exams are skill-based exams. The proficiency exams, which test the language proficiency of the candidate, have a skill-based approach. That is, the candidate is tested on their listening skills, their speaking skills, their reading skills, and their writing skills. So now the next natural question that is to follow is, where and how do we familiarize ourselves with the above aforementioned points? So I'm going to introduce you to the primary resources which are extremely handy and informative. So for each exam, Cambridge has a handbook for teachers, right? So you can see over here, it says pre-A1 starters, A1 movers, and A2 flyers. So this is a handbook for the YLE, or the Young Learners English exam, right? Similarly, you have a handbook over here which says B2 First for School. So this is a handbook for first certificate in English, which is pitched at the B2 level of language proficiency. So in this manner, there's a handbook, a teacher's handbook, which is like a teacher's manual for each exam, which is offered by, which is brought out by Cambridge Assessment, right? So the teacher's handbook is the first resource that we are going to have a look at. Then we have to acquaint ourselves with the sample papers. There's the vocabulary list, especially if we are looking at young learners English, because we have to make sure that the students are familiar with the lexical sets that are prescribed for that particular exam. And finally, we have the teacher guide, which is integrated. And you can see over here, if you look at this screenshot, it is actually a shot of the website. So all of this is downloadable from the Cambridge English website. And sometimes sample papers and vocabulary lists are downloadable as separate PDF files. And many times you will also find them integrated in the handbook, right? So as far as the resources go, we are going to focus on the handbook. Now, in front of you, you will see the handbook for teachers, and there is a certain page, the screenshot of which is visible on the slide. Now, this is what I meant by language focus. Now, for every exam of Cambridge, you have a grammar and structures list, which is primarily the language focus for that particular exam. Now, in this list, you have a list of the grammar elements, the grammar areas, and the functional language. So on one side, you have the grammar area, and against it, you have the grammar structures that the candidate at that level needs to be aware of or needs to make use accurately, right? So this is your language focus. Similarly, you also have a vocabulary list, right? In the YLE, you will have an alphabetical list of all the words which young learners are supposed to know at that level, right? Uh, the second thing which we spoke about were sample tasks and the exam format. Now, to just give you an example, we are looking at the starters reading and writing tasks. Now, to my left, if you see, this page of the handbook gives you a very clear idea of the number of tasks, number of parts which the reading and writing exam has, the number of questions in each part, the marks allotted for each question, the task type, as in what is the focus of the task, and finally a column which talks about what the candidate needs to do, how the candidate needs to attempt the task. So you have this kind of an at a glance kind of table which gives you everything at a glance for each of the skills and for every Cambridge exam, right? Now, moving on, let's look at a particular task. Now, I know it might be a very small image. It might not be very clearly visible on your screen, but I'm just going to give you, I'm going to walk you through it, so you needn't worry. Now, at the young learners level, the tasks are extremely graphic. So they use a lot of visuals. Now, that in itself is evidence that the Cambridge English exams are intended and are designed to assess the comprehension and not the memory of the child. So that's what makes them unique, because these exams are application based. So you can see a visual on the left hand side. Now this is reading and writing part 2. So we have part 2 over here in the table, and we have a sample task from the reading and writing part 2. Now, there are, it has been described here, there is one picture, there is an example, and there are 5 questions which the candidate has to attempt. So the candidate looks at the picture, reads the question, and writes yes or no. So it's a very simple task, but it tests a lot of language sub skills. So it assesses the lexical awareness of the learner. It assesses the learner's ability to comprehend the grammatical structures, to make associations between the sentences and the pictures. So things like that, you know. So though the output required is just yes and no, but it primarily assesses the learner's overall ability to observe, comprehend, and make associations and then respond accurately. So this is a description of the task next to the picture. And this part talks about how to approach the task. Now, this is from the sample paper, and it's very much there, very much present in the teacher's handbook. So you needn't go anywhere. In fact, the handbook even has tips to prepare students for the exam. This is basically a guideline for teachers where they know how to approach the task and they can pass on the same information to students. And when they ask students to attempt the tasks, they can follow these guidelines. And finally, it gives you information on what area the task, what exactly the task assesses in the candidate. Now, this is a very significant area, and it is of vital importance to us because this part is going to uh, be of primary interest to us when we map the curriculum. So now, once we have familiarized ourselves with the concerned international exam that we want our students to take, the next step is a thorough familiarization with the existing course book. By course book, I mean the course book that the school is using, regardless of whichever board the school is under. It can be a state board, it can be a CBSE board, or ICSC, or IGCSC, or it can be an IB curriculum. But the school obviously has a course book, and the teacher needs to sensitize herself with the course book or whatever input or resources she is using to impart English. Right. So how do we go about it? Now, again, with the course book, we have to start with the index and the contents page. And we have to look at the language focus. So most of the course books, they have a detailed kind of template, which gives a very clear picture of the grammar areas, the lexis, and the pronunciation, the phonetics that is covered, and also the skills which are covered in the form of activities. Now, in front of you, I will present the detailed contents or the index of Oxford Pathways, right? Which is an interactive course in English, and this is for grade 1 learners. So this is a course book which many schools use, and I've just chosen it. But almost all course books which come these days, which are they could be Macmillan or Oxford or Cambridge, but they come with a very detailed kind of template like this, where you have the name of the unit, then you have the name, you have the reading focus, you have the vocabulary that is covered, you have the grammar topics, then some of them could cover study skills, and then you have the writing sub skills mentioned, the speaking sub skills, the listening sub skills, and the activities which actually enable all of this, right? So you already have a template like this. Now, your next step, uh, if you take a close look at this, at the contents page, will show you that many of the subskills that are covered in the course book and the language points that are part of the course book are exactly the ones required for YLE starters. We are looking at coursebook 1, right? So you will find a lot of common ground between coursebook 1 and YLE starters. For instance, you have articles, adjectives, and nouns in grammar, right? You can see nouns, you have verbs as well. In Lexis, you have fruits and vegetables, you have color words, you have jumbled words in writing, right? Then you have greeting in speaking, you have listening to adjectives and relating them to given pictures. Then you have identifying, naming words in listening, and all of these are also covered, or they are also the focal areas of the YLE starters exam. So this is your first step. This is how you locate and map the commonalities. So the first step is locating and mapping the commonalities, right? After that, you need to go, for instance, you need to go to fruits and vegetables, okay, the word list, that word family, and compare the two word families. So you take up this word family, you go to the YLE vocabulary list, you compare the two word families and familiarize your students with any additional names of fruits and vegetables which may be a part of the YLE exam but are not there in the list of the course book. So that will not take a lot of time since fruits and vegetables are already part of your existing course book. It's just a matter of familiarizing them with some additional names, right? Now, after you have found this common ground, what do you do next? The next thing you do is you prepare a template, right, to document the commonalities, right? Because you need to have a ready reference in front of your eyes, which you can kind of keep as record, and it would kind of be a navigating tool for you, right, as to how much you have covered and how much ground you still need to cover, and how you kind of blend one with the other. So you can customize your own template, or you can, I have a sample template for you over here. If you see, the exam we are focusing on is starters, and the skill, the exam part is reading and writing. At the YLE level, uh, reading and writing is a combined exam. And then you have the language focus, where you have descriptions of the subskills of reading. Now, here you can name the course book. If you're using only one course book, you can name only one course book. Sometimes teachers use a number of materials and resources. So those resources and materials can go in this column. You can have the page numbers here, and you can make your own notes on how to use the content in the classroom so that you're preparing them for your school curriculum, the state board syllabus, and also uh, kind of focusing on the language aspects which are tested in the Cambridge exam. Now, moving on, I'm going to actually show you how the curriculum is mapped. Now, again, this is a sample which I'm sharing with you. So you can actually map a template like this, right? What you see in front of you is a template that maps the language subskills assessed in Cambridge Wiley Starters exam to the learning outcomes, that is the language learning outcomes expected in the subject of English from students of grades 1 and 2 studying the CBSE curriculum. So this is the CBSE learning outcomes, and they have been mapped. In fact, the objectives of starters, the assessment criteria starters has been mapped on the learning objectives, the language learning outcomes of the CBSE curriculum. So these are the skills, and the ticks indicate the common features, right? So you can even do this exercise. So if the curricular objectives are met, then it means for the most part, you can use the course book. So you can see there are hardly any blanks. There are just 5 columns, and whatever doesn't get mapped, you can obviously prepare them for those parts either through fillers or through extension assignments, which will only add more variety to your classroom, right? Moving on, Now, what you're next going to see is a similar template which maps the language learning outcomes of the CBSE curriculum for students of grades 3, 4, and 5 who are studying the CBSE curriculum, and it compares them with the objectives of the YLE movers and flyers exams. So these are the A1 and the A2 level exams, right? So again, you will see what all is common in movers listening, uh, and then movers reading and writing, and then you have movers speaking, and the same three for flyers, right? So these are kinds of templates that you can prepare, right? And now I'm going to show you one more template. Now, here, this is a very interesting template, and this template maps the language focus, overall language focus from grades 1 to 5 of the CBSE curriculum, and it maps them to the language focus in each level of the Cambridge Wiley exam. So, the language focus in starters, the language focus in movers, and the language focus in flyers. Right now, this is just to give you an idea as to the feasibility of mapping and how curriculum mapping would enable different boards to get more clarity on the focal areas of an international language testing system like Cambridge English exams, and thus make an international certification available to their students with minimum extracurricular preparation. So this was the idea, this was the motive of sharing the language, the curriculum mapping templates with you. Like I said, you can have your own templates or you can customize them. You can refer to curriculum mapping templates online, or if you have resources related to curriculum mapping, I'm sure those resources have lots of handy curriculum mapping templates, and you are free to use any of those, right? Now, moving on from the templates to the extension tasks. Now, there are obviously going to be some areas which might not be included in the curriculum map, which might not be common in both exams, and for which you might have to tweak the existing tasks a little so that you can achieve your dual objective of preparing them for both the exams. Now, I'm going to give you some very simple, handy techniques which you can incorporate in your classroom. You can have these techniques as fillers, you can design them as extension tasks, as fun activities for your learners, and without even realizing, your learners will be prepared for both the exams. Now, every course book which comes, any course book that a school uses, is graphically very rich. Course books, especially for middle school and young learners, use a lot of pictures. So, one easy way of giving a lot of language practice to your students is to exploit the pictures, the visuals, to use them optimally. Now, here, as you can see on the slide, this is a picture of a child's room. Right now, you can use the same visual to do multiple tasks with multiple language focus. So there can be a lexical focus, there can be a grammatical focus, there can be a fluency focus, there can be a comprehension focus, and I'm going to quickly walk you through these tasks. I mean, the slide could accommodate only these many, but there are innumerable tasks which you can design around a particular visual. So, point and tell, which is one of the skills that is tested at the starters level. So, you can ask children to point and tell, or point and label, as in they have to identify the objects in the picture. Picture description. Now, this can have multiple the focus can change. So you can have a there is, there are focus, make sentences using there is or there are. So there is a subject verb agreement in that. You can ask them to use articles. So there is a pillow, there is a pink pillow. So you're using adjectives. There are some books on the shelf. So you're using prepositions of place, you're also using quantifiers. So you can design a focus depending on what area you want to reinforce, right? You can even practice question tags, like two students, a student making a question tag. There are uh, say there are a few books on the shelf, aren't there? Or there's a blue lamp on the table. Hmm? Is it there? Right? So or the cupboard is open, isn't it? So depending on the grammatical areas that you need to focus on for that particular grade and for that particular Cambridge English exam, you can have your range of activities designed around a particular picture. You can also have a comparison task, as in the student looks at this picture and they compare their own room. So they can use contrastive conjunctions, like my room has a double bed, but this picture has a single bed, or whereas this picture has a single bed, or there is a mirror in my room, but there's no mirror in this room. This is, in fact, one of the speaking tasks at the movers level, and a version of this in the flyers speaking task, right? You can have a listening exercise around it, where you can make students sit in pairs, but not facing each other, but back to back, where they can't see each other. Now, you call them A and B. Now, all A's in each pair, they get the picture, and they describe the picture to their partner, who is sitting with their back to A, and the partner draws the picture. So the drawing will depend on the accurate description by A. So it develops a lot of skills on A's part. A is giving instructions, A is positioning objects, so A is covering prepositions of place and adjectives and naming objects. And B is, of course, listening carefully, listening for detail, and representing it through a drawing. Then you can also have a location of objects focus, which focuses exclusively on prepositions of place, right? And besides this, you can also have fluency based exercises, which are part of the speaking tasks at the movers and the flyers level, where the candidate is expected to look at scene cards, story cards, and they have to narrate a story. So you can tell them that this is the first of the cards. Now start a story. Use this card to begin a story, and then the story can evolve. Right? So this can be used for a fluency development activity too. So this was to just give you a very rough idea of how visuals can be exploited, and the language areas which are not covered through the course book can be done in this manner, either as written assignments, or as language activities in class, which could be a lot of fun and which could revise and reinforce some of the language points, right? Now, moving on to the higher education scene. Now, we already spoke that there are two verticals in the higher education scene. One is the general English vertical, which is offered to students in senior school and in college, and one is the business English vertical. So what you see in blue is the business English vertical, and it has been mapped against the CEFR levels of B1, B2, and C1. Right? Now, even when it comes to the higher exams, your approach is going to be more or less similar, but not exactly the same. So, A, you need to focus on the language subskills. Now, at the higher level, it is not very practical to focus on the vocabulary list. For business English, you can still give it a try, but for general English, it's going to be too vast. And so it's better that you focus on language subskills. That is, the subskills of speaking, the subskills of writing, those of reading, and those of listening. What are the subskills that the exam assesses? Then Then again, the same drill where you familiarize yourself with the test format and the task type, right? And I will say you need to focus especially on the writing genres, because exams like the ones you see over here, the business English exams, and exams like PET, the preliminary English test, the key English test, KET, PET, Cambridge English exams are better known by their acronyms. So KET, PET, FCE, these exams focus on a lot of different writing genres. So it will do you well, it will serve you very well if you also pay attention to the writing genres. And when it comes to the speaking tasks, pay specific attention to the functions that are being tested. Now, we'll have a look at it in detail, but to first acquaint you with a teacher's handbook for a higher, for an exam which is meant for adult, middle, not adult learner. It could be for adult learners of English, or it could be for high school, senior school, right? Or middle school. So here you have the A2 level, right? So A1, A2, KET is A2, and then you have PET at B1. So if we look at the A2 level, you have this handbook for teachers, and you have around 2-3 pages which talk about the language focus, right? So it will give you language specifications, language functions, and then all the grammatical areas that need to be, along with the structures, that need to be that the student needs to be familiar with, and the student needs to be able to comprehend and respond to and maybe use while writing, right? Now we'll have a close look at one of the test formats and test descriptions. So I have for you over here the paper, the third paper, which is the speaking paper of KET. Now you will see that on the on the left hand side, there's a general description of the speaking exam. So it says that the exam has 2 parts, and then it gives you the description of the interaction pattern, as in what kind of communication are they expecting in that particular exam task, and then the task type. So what does each task type uh, kind of cover and assess, and then how candidates are scored. So the marks, the way they are assessed, and the areas for which they are assessed. Now here, next to the general description, you have structure and tasks, which gives you the details of each part. So here you have part 1, where the task type is mentioned, and then the focus, which means the language focus or the functions focus. Right. So the first part is normally an icebreaker, where it focuses more on meeting and greeting, and in which in this part the candidate has to present factual information about themselves. So it is personal information of a factual nature, right? And this the timing is this task lasts for about 5 to 6 minutes. So there are 2 interlocutors in the room. Sorry, there are 2 examiners in the room. One of them is the interlocutor, and the other one, who is not involved, is actually the one who is assessing. While the interlocutor gives a global score, and she is the one who is asking questions. And there are 2 candidates who are talking to each other, and sometimes with the interlocutor, and that is how they are assessed. Right now, just to make you mm, kind of give you an idea as to how you can integrate a KET task or a Cambridge English speaking task into your existing curriculum. Now, the speaking tasks that we just discussed in the last slide, one of the tasks, they have the functional focus of do you think, where the examiner asks the candidate a do you think question, which obviously which obviously focuses on the function of expressing opinions, likes or preferences on the candidate's part, and whatever preferences or likes they express, they'll then have to validate and justify them. So something like do you think playing cricket is a good hobby? Why or why not? Or do you think pursuing a sport is a good hobby? Why or why not? So it's not enough to say, yes, I think cricket is a great hobby, but then you also have to justify why. Yeah. Or if you don't like it, why not? So the primary focus is, do you think why or why not? Now, what you have in front of you, in fact, this is a unit from the NCERT course book, and this unit is in the form of a comic, or you can say a graphic. You have graphic novels. I wouldn't call this a novel, it's a short story, but it's in the form of a comic genre. Right now, the teacher, before introducing the unit or before starting the unit, she can ask a pre-reading question to her students, which focuses on the function, which is a part of the KET speaking task, right? So she can ask her students something like, do you think reading comics is fun? Why or why not? So she's doing two things here. A, she is giving them practice for the Cambridge English KET speaking task 2. And B, she's also introducing a task, or she's conducting an activity which serves as a lead in into her unit. So it becomes an introductory activity to the unit on Gopal and the Hilsa fish. Now, this story is about a witty villager called Gopal, who outwits the king. The king of the land has thrown a challenge, and Gopal is able to outsmart the king. That's the story. And the setting is a rural setting, it's in a village. So, after finishing this unit, the teacher can similarly design a post reading speaking activity, which can be slightly more exhaustive, more challenging than the initial pre reading activity. And this can be given a speaking focus, or it can be given a writing focus also, though this is tested in the speaking part of KET. So the teacher can have a question like, do you think living in a village is more challenging? Why or why not? So, through questions like these, the teacher is not only familiarizing or giving practice to the student in the functional language which is going to be tested in the Cambridge English exam. She is not only covering her unit, but she's doing much more than that. She is taking this unit beyond the realm of the course book, right? So, through this, she is asking the students to think critically, to think creatively, to maybe look up references, to kind of understand the rural picture of India. So this is an extension task, and it is an open-ended task, and the possibilities are immense. So here, in fact, the teacher is killing not two birds but three birds with one stone, right? So she's looking at cognitive skill development, she's looking at language skill development, she's looking at covering the course, the syllabus, and so she's doing multiple things, and she's looking at maximum participation also, right? So this was an example of incorporating or tweaking tasks to serve the speaking, which will serve the speaking focus in the KET exam. We will do a similar kind of task for the writing part of KET. Now, this is in front of you. You have a sample task of part 6 of KET, of the KET exam. So I will read out the task to you and I will walk you through the task. The task says, now what does the task want the candidate to do? The task says you're going shopping with your English friend Pat tomorrow. Write an email to Pat. Say where you want to meet, what time you want to meet, what you want to buy. Write 25 words or more. Write the email on your answer sheet. So the genre is an email. It is guided writing because there are 3 prompts given and there's a word limit, right? So that is the skeleton of the KET writing task part 6. So the teacher needs to understand the task type. That, okay, if I have to prepare, design a task based on the existing course book, in a similar on similar lines, which will prepare them for the KET writing exam. I need to give them a word limit, and I need to give them prompts which they will need to include in the body of their written output, whatever genre it is, right? So now let's look at an actual task based again on Gopal and the Hilsa fish, which is the unit from the NCERT course book, and how a teacher can design a question on similar lines. So this could be a post-reading writing activity. So post-reading is after having read this unit, this could be a writing task. And the task goes like this. You are planning to take a trip to a nearby village with your best friend Samir. Write an email to him. Say where you want to meet, what time you want to meet, how you plan to travel, what you plan to do. Write 25 words or more, right? So you are scaffolding the writing. This is a guided writing task. It's on the lines of the KET writing exam. You've given them a word limit. You've also given them the freedom to write a little more, but not less. And so you are moving in the right direction, right? Now, moving on to the business English vertical. Now, business English is a range of exams. It's called Business English Certificates, and BEC for short, BEC. It's an excellent range of exams for students who are studying, who are into a technical field or who are going to study management. So it's good for students pursuing engineering or students pursuing commerce and or students in IT and students in management. What it does is it familiarizes with them with English at the workplace. Now, this business benchmark course book is a remarkable course book because it is designed exactly to cater to the sub skills and the task types that are tested in the business English certificates exam. So this could be an extremely valuable additional resource to your existing course book. If you are a college teacher or a university teacher and you are preparing your students for the business English certificates module, right? So you don't have to design tasks, you don't have to map them, you can just use the business benchmark. In fact, not only does this include and contain tasks that you will find ready to use and prepare your students for, it also familiarizes you with several pedagogical aspects that will be very good to you as a teacher because it comes with directions for the teacher, as in the kind of interaction patterns she needs to set up in the classroom management techniques which she needs to follow, or the guided discovery approach, for instance, which is a way of introducing new material, and so on and so forth. So this book is in fact a wonderful resource for teachers teaching in colleges, especially where students are going to pursue a technical vocation. Uh, let's look at some of the takeaways, some of the benefits of curriculum mapping. I hope I don't have to convince you that curriculum mapping opens up a whole new world of possibilities because your students can actually take an international exam and they can be certified internationally. They can have a certificate which acknowledges their language proficiency and which has a global recognition without putting any phenomenal additional efforts. So there are no extra classes. Neither does the teacher invest that much, nor does the student burn out too much. And in fact, curriculum mapping is something that enables the teacher to bring in aspects of the international test into the existing curriculum and kind of uh, plan her sessions in a way which serve a dual purpose. More than that, I will say that, in fact, for teachers, it is also a part of their awareness building. The teacher becomes aware of global expectations and standards of language proficiency, international standards, which are expected from students, right? So, in fact, she is introducing her student to language skills and functions that are a global requirement today for a certain proficiency level. And in the process of curriculum mapping, she's also increasing her awareness. And this can help her decide the best course of action, the best possible use of the course book and the language classes, which are a part of the timetable, and the best possible means of achieving her objective of preparing her students for the school exam or the college exam and an international language testing exam simultaneously. So that's the benefit, the major benefit of curriculum mapping. Now, I had promised you right at the start of the webinar that I'm going to take you through some very exciting and very engaging, ready to use resources, language resources, which you can bring to your classroom to add variety to your classes. In fact, you don't have to tweak them, you don't have to modify them, you can just use them as they are and absolutely free of cost. So, you have this virtually anywhere where this is the URL for it, and these units are basically audio pieces which are uh, which are targeted or which are designed for the B1 and B2 level learners of English, and they focus on your listening skills. There are 7 episodes in all, and it's an audio series where it has two university going students, Geeta and Paul, and they are discussing how to go about their language preparation. And there's this mysterious professor who comes to their assistance, who promises to help them. And these series also come with lesson plans for teachers, so it's something which you can directly introduce in your classroom, and it's a lot of fun. I'm sure college teachers will find it extremely useful and relevant, right? Then you have write and improve, which and you have the URL over here. Now, what does this do? This is a free writing tool for learners of English that marks their writing in seconds. And the writing tasks are designed for learners or candidates from A1 to C2, which is all 6 levels, right? All through the 6 levels. So you have tasks for A1 levels, you have tasks for A2 levels, right up to C2 levels. It definitely improves your English writing skills because, as in your students' English writing skills, because the more you attempt the tasks, the more you make them attempt the tasks, the more conversant they become with what is expected of them. A significant benefit or upside of these tasks is that students get instant feedback, and they understand their marks, they understand the way they are being assessed, and that assessment is again in sync with the international assessment criteria which Cambridge English exams follow. So they get their grade in seconds, and it also gives teachers a very clear class view as to which student stands where with regard to writing skills, right? The next thing that you have on your slide in front of you is the Cambridge English TV, right, on YouTube. And this is the URL for Cambridge English TV. It is the official Cambridge English TV channel. You have examples of several speaking tests, right, where you can see how the candidates are attempting the tasks. So when you see an actual video, you get a better understanding of the way you need to prepare your students for that particular task and the language skills that the student is being assessed for. You have idioms and phrases. You have as many as 78 webinars on ELT, right? And language. There are tips, some top tips for preparing students for the business English certificates verticals, and these are very valuable 25 tips. And apart from that, you have a lot of English language learning tips, which both students and teachers can find extremely handy. You have a phenomenal presence of Cambridge English on social media also. Cambridge English has a range of apps, and some of them are really fun apps. They are very engaging, interactive in nature, and they can keep the student busy for hours, right? So you have exam lift apps, which are mapped, which are designed for candidates taking the A2 and B1 levels of proficiency tests. You have the Quiz Your English app, which is designed for B1 and B2 level learners. You have the Monkey Puzzles app. This is a fun app which children really love. It's designed for A1 and A2 learners. And then you have the Business English Certificates app, which is meant for B1 and B2 learners of business English. Plus, for teachers, you must check this out, since most of the participants, I'm presuming, are teachers and teacher educators and heads. This is a wonderful certification. The online TKT course, it is a certification which tests the pedagogical awareness of the teacher, especially in the language classroom, and it comes with an app. So it's another very nice way of upskilling yourself if you are a language teacher, or of introducing it for your language teachers if you are heading a school. Cambridge has a significant presence on Facebook, and you can check our Facebook presence. Um, and the URLs, the links are here for you, right? Uh, so you have Cambridge English Teaching, which is the Facebook page for teachers, and you have Cambridge Assessment English, which is the official Facebook page of Cambridge Assessment. You also have Learning English for, again, students, teachers, aspirants, candidates who are keen on improving their language proficiency and on improving their, upskilling themselves with regards to the English language. There are as many as 85 free activities. There are online activities specially designed for teenagers and adults, with a focus on grammar, some only on pronunciation, some which could have a vocabulary focus, some which could be which are aimed at improving your listening skills, and some on your reading and writing skills, right? And these activities and these tasks are of varying lengths. They are not very long because the attention span of the candidate has to be taken into account. So they range from 0 to 5 minutes to 5 to 10 minutes and 10 plus minutes. And they are aimed at all basic, independent, and proficient language learners, right? Who are at A1, A2, B1, B2, or C1, C2, all 6 levels. Just in case some of you are not aware of this, uh, you need to go to cambridgeenglish.org, and there is a plethora of resources absolutely free for teachers, right? Where you just need to select the qualification, that is the exam which you want to prepare your students for. Then you select the CEFR level, you select the resources, the particular resource that you're looking for, whether it's a handbook or an audio input or it's a speaking video, and then you select the skill and you search, or you just say all for skills and all resources and you search, and you get the whole list of resources which is downloadable, right? So that was curriculum mapping for you. I hope you had a fair familiarization and a fair idea of how to go about using your course book and familiarizing yourself with the teacher's handbook and the range of resources which is available on the Cambridge English website, and then go about curriculum mapping accordingly. I hope that you had some takeaways from this session. I want to thank you that you were very patient and for engaging in this session. And I'm now ready to take questions. You can actually type your questions in the chat box, and I'll be having a look at them simultaneously as I take you through the next couple of slides. What you can expect next week is in days to come, most probably next week, is another webinar on teacher observation, right? So we'll be sharing the links with you very soon. And that is again a webinar which is going to be conducted by me. And it's called Humanizing Your Resource. So this is a webinar that talks about the benefits of teacher observation, the ways a teacher can be observed, and why a teacher needs to be humanized. She is not just another employee, but she comes with her own skill sets. She adds a lot of value to the organization. It looks at various teacher observation templates that can be used and various ways of observation, and then the benefits of peer observation, the benefits of introducing an interdisciplinary observation and interdisciplinary approach, and so on. So that's a webinar you can look forward to. And these are more webinars that you can register for, and they are on writing skills, listening skills, reading skills. You can see that the Indian Standard Time IST has been mentioned under the webinars. These are the dates and these are the presenters. You have the presenters from Cambridge, UK, who are presenting these webinars, and you can attend these webinars in the days to come. If you have had a good look at these webinars, so we have 2 sessions on a given day, and these webinars actually give you more insights, more approaches. They familiarize you with more techniques to engage your students constructively, meaningfully, and in an entertaining, fun manner on an online platform, right? Looking at the COVID scene, I think they are extremely handy and they can be very relevant. Here are some more webinars, right? Or are they the same? No, they are different. So you have At Home, But You're Not Alone, right? By presenter Jane Ritter from Cambridge, UK. You have Boost Your Learning, and it's going to be jointly presented by Anne Robinson and Jane Ritter. You have Writing Skills, again, I think this is a repeat from the previous slide by Anne Robinson. So I am ready for your questions. If you
Thank you, Shayanti. Actually, I'm trying to keep track of the questions, but I'm just not able to because there's just so many questions and thank yous. And I think the response has been amazing. I think everybody seemed to have just loved the session. It was very informative. It was an excellent session. So that's the comments I'm seeing. So I really don't think so. I'm able to really get a question directly, but maybe we'll kind of compile it. But just to thank you very much from Cambridge Assessment English, Shayanti, for this very well thoughtful, put together, useful webinar. And thanks to all the participants once again for attending today's webinar. We hope it clarified your doubts on how you could map what you're currently doing, whether you're in a CBSE school or in a state board school or an ICSE school, with your curriculum, so that you could also offer a international exam like the Cambridge Assessment English exam. So if you would like to know more about how your school could work along with us, how we can work along with your English department to offer this at a school level or at a college level, there is an email ID there, enquiries@cambridgeenglish.in. If you would like to know more about the resources that Shayanti shared, just drop us an email and we'll send you the resources. We have a couple of webinars that Shayanti was talking about, which is happening this week and the next week. We also have Shayanti's session again on humanizing teaching, so how you could give feedback for teachers. So that's again happening. So if you want to keep track of what's happening, drop us an email and we'll keep you informed about what's happening with all our resources. So once again, thank you for joining us. If you really like to work with Cambridge Assessment English to offer this at your school or a college level, you want more details, you want to know examples of how you could map the curriculum, please do let us know. Drop us an email and we'll keep you posted. A lot of you have been asking for certificates. Like I said earlier, we will share the certificates by your registered email ID. Give us some time because there are a couple of webinars happening, so it will reach you in due course. So thank you once again and for your valuable time. And thanks, Shayanti. And I hope this webinar was useful to everybody. So have a good evening and stay safe, everybody. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for being here.